good afternoon and welcome to MedTech Crossroads. Hope you are enjoying this beginning of June. Today, Friday, June 4th, 2021. Today we've got COVID Connect, our COVID news. After that, some local news. And then a perception piece on when communication fails. After that, it's the first week of the new season of the Pitch Party. And after that, Q&A as usual. Thanks for being here today. I want to take you first of all to the COVID metrics and vaccine distribution from covid.cdc.gov. And what we're going to use today again is the actual PowerPoint from, the PDF from CDC. I'm going to stop this share and start a different one. And that PDF, if we can bring it up here, is the greatly in-depth digest that CDC has been putting together. There it is, we've got it up. For each of the states, if you want to know what's been happening with COVID in each of the states, you can download the state profile report from covid.cdc.gov. Mostly good news out of the state of Michigan, as it has been getting better and better and better. Honestly, at this point, we're sort of doing this to create a track record of what has happened so that we don't forget, so that we can go back and look at some of the highlights as time passes. The community transmission level still considered substantial transmission in the state of Michigan, although as I'm going to show you later, that's actually down from previous weeks, which is good news. Changed from previous weeks on their dashboard, all in a positive direction. I'm going to come down here to the cases trend that is now below almost anything that we've seen over the course of this, except maybe very early on. So great news there. The positivity rate of tests now down to something like 5. Great news there. And the deaths, of course, great news as those continue to drop. So we're very thankful to see that in the state of Michigan. Percent of the population fully vaccinated, you see there. Of course, some of the northern counties, in terms of percentage, doing better. Of course, they're much less populous counties than down here in the southern part of the state. They keep changing these graphics every week, so it's a little bit hard to keep some of the consistency, but here are the hospitalizations, hospital admissions, and we're nearly back down to where we were at the 2 troughs for this pandemic in Michigan, which is just wonderful news. We heard some anecdotes from folks about not finding COVID cases in their locale, which is really awesome. Here's the graphic that we've been tracking for the last, I want to say 9 weeks. Which is the community transmission level by county in the state of Michigan. For the first time, this isn't a blanket of red, which is really, really interesting because for the last 2.5 months, it has been a blanket of red. It's just been complete transmission all the time. You can see it there on the right, that red section between, say, the beginning of April and the beginning of May, middle of May. High transmission rates across the state of Michigan, now coming, thankfully, well out of that. Here's county by county, a number of testing information here, but the one that we always like to look at, which is the national picture for vaccinations. Michigan currently ranks 25th in the nation for vaccinations, so we're right about in the middle, right about average in terms of vaccinations, as you can see there. In terms of the national picture, 362 million doses delivered. That's 100,000 per 100,000. That's an interesting number. Didn't parse that one for you beforehand. But here on the daily count of vaccine doses administered, the trend continues downward as it has since the beginning of April. So that continues to drop. We're almost back to not many people getting vaccinated. National picture, the one that we always like to look at, not much PCR testing happening. The hospital admissions, the country is pretty much green at this point with some yellow parts. The good news here is that the state of Michigan is only 48th now. We're not in dead last place in terms of new hospital admissions. But maybe something to watch, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. We're seeing some hot spots down there. So let's see what happens. We hope nothing happening down there. Of course, a month before, Michigan was a hotbed of red for hospital admissions, and we shall see where it goes from here. Thankfully, deaths are greatly down, although it does look like the state of Oklahoma may be having an uptick there, as well as a little bit of the eastern seaboard. Something to watch here. Of course, 3 months ago, it was the South that was being hit hardest with the deaths. A lot of tragedy there. And here's community transmission throughout the country, county by county. Thankfully, not as much red as we saw in previous weeks. A lot of yellow, but that's moderate. A lot of blue in the Plains states. So it's good to see that dropping off as well. Very thankful. States cautiously reopening. And we'll just see where this goes from here. We will continue to do the COVID metrics, as we've said before, as long as there's something new to report, but also whenever there's something that we want to capture for the future as we look back on this. Because honestly, a lot of the interpretation and a lot of the things that have come out have, you know as well as we, sometimes the pundits are right and sometimes they're wrong. And it's just nice to be able to look back over time and say, hey, here's something we flagged, we'd like to look at it again. So that's one of the reasons that we do this now. I will stop this share and restart our PowerPoint as we look to some of our local news. And first of all, we just wanted to mention, it's been a crazy month for our family based on the birth of our son, Samuel Joseph. He's been in and out of the hospital, doing much better right now. We had a show recently, a show on usability that was so well attended and so many questions, and we promised some follow-up to various folks. That hasn't happened yet, so I just wanted to let you know if you're listening today and you're interested in some of those usability topics, we are going to follow up with you still. Don't despair, that information, that contact is coming. Locally, Into Being continues to look for an embedded systems developer. A lot of cool candidates. We are still holding that position open. We would love to talk to you if you are into embedded systems and firmware, microcontroller firmware programming. And also, you can find all of our FDA education segments on the website at intobeing.com. If you go under the webinar tab, you can find all of those FDA education segments. This brought to us by our friends at Ann Arbor Spark. Of course, Phil Santer was on the show just a few weeks ago. He pointed this out to us. You can ignore the registration date there of May 26th. It sounds like there are still openings. This Transatlantic Cluster Initiative on MedTech, a virtual delegation to Germany. Join our virtual delegation to Germany, take part in the opportunity to learn about the latest innovations, exchange best practices, and explore partnership opportunities with leading German industry experts based in Bavaria, Hamburg, and North Rhine-Westphalia. It's a 5-day program, just the mornings, it sounds like, between June 21st and 25th. There's a nominal cost. It's really just a nuisance fee to make sure that the companies are committed to doing it. And there's going to be 12 companies from the US. They'd like Michigan to be represented, and I don't know if at this moment it is or not. But if you are a startup involved in MedTech, or really anyone involved in MedTech that wants to talk to folks in Germany to find out about opportunities there, you'd be welcome to become part of this. The contact information for this is Jasmine Gradowski. That's Gradowski at gaccmidwest.org. And this is being put on by GACC Midwest. So feel free to reach out. Thank you, Phil Santer, for that information. And feel free to get in contact with these folks. Also, I want to let you know about the A2 Biosocial. This is a great event that's obviously been made more challenging by COVID because they had to stop a lot of their in-person things that were happening. But Matthew Himes is the driver behind this. He's been on the show a few times. The A2 Biosocial is coming back in person. MishBio, Ann Arbor Spark, My Lead Consulting, all behind this effort led by Matthew Himes. They are trying something new this month. Tuesday, June 8th. That's this coming Tuesday. Matthew is going to have everybody out at West Park in Ann Arbor, Michigan, 5 to 7 p.m. They're going to do it again. They're going to start it back outside. You can register at mishbio.org. If you go to their events page, you will find the A2 Biosocial, and you can register for that. All the best to Matthew and team for doing this. They tried some amazing things, Sococo and some other platforms to provide online meeting spaces, and people showed up for it. We're looking forward to the days when we had it must have been 100 people in the basement of Pretzel Bell. I think that was a high water mark, and we're trusting that it gets back to that again. Just a great way for the community to connect. And as you know, that's what we're all about here on MedTech Crossroads, is getting people together. So reach out and see if you can be part of that A2 Biosocial on Tuesday, June 8th. Also, just to remind you of the pitch party, the first pitch today, $2,500 quarterly prize now. The MedTech Crossroads pitch party, we can't pick winners and losers, but we want to have fun talking about MedTech startup pitches. And the way that you can get involved with that is send a pitch deck to pitchparty@medtechcrossroads.org. And presentations are limited to 10 minutes. PowerPoint format of problem statement, vision, value proposition, team, milestones, business model, competitors, and the ask or functionally equivalent areas. We are planning to have our first participant of the month on the show with us today. Although I have to mention, at the moment, we seem to have had a failure to connect. So we will see if that actually happens today or not. Didn't manage to log in, so we'll give them a whiff at bat on the first time. But hopefully that comes through. We won't disclose who the first participant was, and maybe will show up yet on the show. So apologies if that doesn't happen. Our judges for the pitch party: Andy Rader from Evergreen M&A Partners, Dr. Nikki Kennedy, founder of Arbor Hive, Jim Metzger, the president of Keystone Solutions Group on the west side of Michigan, Stacy Frankovich, program manager at the MedHealth cluster run out of Techtown in Detroit. They were all on the show last week talking about the things that they don't like, when they hear from startups. A great show. When we get that posted, please take a look. Great advice in that, especially if you are a startup pitching for funds. Well, today, a reflection. I want to talk about when communication fails, when it doesn't work. And today, we're going to focus on healthcare delivery and product development. These are two areas near and dear to my heart, especially of late. But as you can imagine, communication applies not just in these areas, but really in every other area of life where people have to work together. It was George Bernard Shaw who said that the single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it's taken place. We think we communicate, we all think we're great communicators, but oftentimes we drop the ball in some way or another. And today I want to talk to you about a tools approach versus a mindset approach when it comes to communication. Because we can be very focused on our tools, our communications tools. When the internet got going, it was bulletin boards and email, and then other forms came along and social media. And now it's almost limitless what you can do, what tools you can create. But as I'm sure you're well aware, the problems often come down to mindset, not just what tools we have at our disposal. The first tool I want to talk to you about today, tool in focus, the electronic medical record. Now, of course, this in some ways is a great boon because paper records no longer have to be kept. Paper records limit you to one office, one place that you have to be, one staff that can go get them at specific times of the day. And it truly is amazing when you can go online to a portal, often run by Epic or Cerner, through one of the major health systems, and you can find your medical records. You can have access to them. Your doctors can have access to them any time of the day or night. Decisions can be made, even communications put forward through that portal. And there are some really cool perks of electronic medical records. But EMRs are fundamentally a tool. They're not a mindset. And oftentimes when we talk about development and making healthcare better, We talk about how can we make the EMR better. As an example, I've got a dear friend. They ended up having some terrible times in surgery. They had some terrible times with the wrong drugs being given to their child. And it turns out that the EMR didn't show contraindications readily to the doctors and nurses who came into the room. It was a matter of where the data was positioned on the page. Those are good things to ask. Can we make the EMR better? Should we get the team of software engineers out and put that in a better place on the page? But really, how can we make the EMR better is often not the deepest and best question that we should be asking. There's a mindset here. The EMR can't be any better than the desire and effort of the worst communicator on the medical team. Now, this came home to us very recently with our experience with the birth of our Samuel Joseph. And the first place to start in this tangled web of communications is the fact that most of the doctors and healthcare workers that took care of us were phenomenal professionals and phenomenal humans. I don't know how most of our frontline workers, whether they're seeing kids who come into the ER for problems after birth, or people seeing folks who come in with COVID, I don't know how those people maintain the professionalism and empathy that they do. And so, as we've often said on this show, our heart goes out and our thanks go out to our healthcare workers who manage to maintain that level of professionalism and empathy and care at all times of the day and night. I don't know how you do it, but thank you from the bottom of our heart. You're truly what drives this community and this industry. But there's things that we noticed, and there's one challenge that we noticed that sometimes even the best intentions couldn't overcome. An enemy in the room that wasn't any of the people in the room. It was the siloing, the putting into different bins, different departments, all trying to talk through an electronic medical record system that itself has no empathy, has no feelings, and has no humanity. And it turns out that problems crop up from that. If you've ever been a patient or you've ever been a healthcare provider, I think you know what I'm talking about. And this is one of the things that came up to us, and we realized after our most recent stays, that sometimes the deepest problems in healthcare aren't ones that a better tool is necessarily going to fix. It's a mindset. For example, if a practitioner forgets to flag a test as urgent, the family can do their job. The practitioners can do their job. Scheduling did their job. Everybody did their job. And yet, something languishes, something doesn't happen, and then blame can start to be thrown around. Blame that can escalate. Things that can get way, way, way out of hand. Was it the EMR's fault? Did the tool fail? And the answer, of course, is no, the tool just did whatever you told it to do. It comes down to a mindset problem. How are we communicating? One of the things that we found is that communication in healthcare always seems to be better when everybody's in the room. When you put everybody in the same room and say, what is the next step that we're doing? And are we all in agreement on it? And so, a little reflection here. If we're talking about healthcare with the recent experience of the parent of a patient, let's watch for places where communicate is not happening. Let's ask that. I actually had a healthcare practitioner recently relate to me, yeah, it really looks like not enough communication happened. The EMR was there, it was doing its job, but the communication failed to happen. Little reflection on healthcare. But as we think about communication, let's ask this question of other domains that we're very fond of here at Into Being. The next tool I want to bring in focus is the design and document control system. If you're part of a startup developing a new medical device, and as you've heard us talk about many times, you have to comply with 21 CFR 820.30 and 820.40 among many other aspects of your requirements. Now, these may seem like enigmas, But behind them is the requirement to design control and document control your process, what you're doing. And this is very hard because early stage innovators often want to get to the creative part. They want to, sure, they know what's going on, but they've thrown it in an email here or in a text there. It's on a scrap of paper stuffed into a desk. And that's not sufficient when it comes time to go to the FDA and to say, we're ready to submit this for clearance. There have to be clear documentary traces there. There has to be clear logic behind that. Risk, standards, user needs all have to be documented and traced in meaningful ways. And so it can be very tempting to turn to the tool. And oftentimes we hear things like, this documentation system will make our life easier. We're just going to go grab something because it's going to make our life easier. And we're going to be able to focus on the things that matter. And oftentimes this is a tool versus a mindset fallacy. Because really, your system, whatever you use for documentation and design control, it's whatever helps you retain and communicate what is truly needed. It's not magic. It's just the system that helps you do what is actually needed. Just like an EMR can't be any better than what's fed into it, your design and document control system can't be any better than the communications that sit on top of it. That's what your team, if you're working in medical product development, needs to promote and needs to work on. And so it doesn't matter what you pick. There's a number of systems out there that advertise that they do document control, a number of them listed here. Sometimes it's as simple as using things like DocuSign and Dropbox and Microsoft Office, and that works too. It's just a question of what works for you and for your team, and do you understand what you're implementing? That's the most important part. Because when your team makes a design decision, or they identify a risk, or they try something that needs its pedigree documented so you know what you're telling the FDA that you did, what really matters is that you can find it again and they understand who made the decision and what the logic was behind that decision. And that ultimately you can point and say, yeah, this satisfies the letter of the law, but also it works for us. So when it comes to document control and design control, please watch for places where communicate is not happening. Does this slide look familiar? It's the same story. You could take this slide and apply it to your family. You could apply it to your work. You could apply it to a lot of other places. Look for the places where communicate is not happening. One more example that we thought of here, a tool in focus, something that's often used as a tool by medical device development startups. It is the fabled regulatory strategy document. I need a regulatory strategy. Or sometimes we hear, we have our regulatory strategy. And it sounds good because you can ask it that way, or an investor will say, where's your regulatory strategy? But it's a question fraught with peril. It's mistaking a single tool for a mindset. Here's what I mean. A regulatory strategy is just one point in time. It's not an ongoing commitment to communication. And that's the theme of what we're talking about today. Communicate. The biggest hardship of communication is the belief that it actually happened. Well, how do you think about regulatory strategy then? If it's not a tool, but it's a mindset, how should we think about it? I want you to think of this, and it's a relatively new analogy. Think of a football playbook. Now, some of us are not sports fans, and some of us are, so I hope this makes mileage with you. But oftentimes, a team will have a playbook, and they can be very, very large. If we're in this situation and the other team's in this situation, here's one thing we could try. If we're in this situation, the other team's in this situation, here's another thing we could try. If we're in this situation and the other team's in that situation, here's a third thing we can try. And the list goes on and on and on for offense and for defense and depending on the situation. It's a great way to think about strategy. And of course, the playbook for something as complex as medical device design, oftentimes the playbook isn't written down. It lives in the expertise of advisors and mentors and those who have walked the path before. And they have the experience to say, I know where I would go from here if this situation presents itself, or if that situation presents itself. From right at this point, we can say that these are the things that we would do, but we know that that's going to change once we walk this path a little bit. If you've heard us talk about the Cynefin framework, you know that a big part of product development is looking for unknown unknowns and getting the answers to known unknowns. And this is really a process. It's really a strategy. It's a matter of communication and ongoing communication. It's a bunch of nodes. It's figuring out, where do I go from here? It's not a one-time document, regulatory strategy, as we so often hear it referred to, as though it were unchanging. You've heard them say, a plan is worth nothing. The planning is everything. Or, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And so, one of the things we hear many times is, I got a great regulatory strategy and it cost me this much money. And our first response to that is, you paid too much for one single page out of a playbook. What you were really looking for was the knowledge behind that single page. And that page, I guarantee you, in 1 month is probably going to change. But beyond that, are you looking at your regulatory strategy as a question of communication, of ongoing communication? Communicate, communicate, communicate. And when you're done, communicate some more. In all of these instances, we've found, both as a family looking for care for a child, and as medical device developers working with clients on questions of design and document control and regulatory strategy and other development topics, we've found that inevitably the best thing is to get everybody together, make sure that we agree on where things are and what the next actions are. That's what truly drives this forward. Your advisors and your mentors and those on your team with experience, they've got the pieces of the playbook in their head. What really has to happen is the huddle, coming together and finding out, what are we going to do next to drive this ball forward for the benefit of our company, for the benefit of our families, for the benefit of our patients, for the benefit of our community, and for all of society. So again, watch for places where communicate, communicate, communicate is not happening. And I'll bet if you pause right now, wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with, maybe your biggest concern is something in your company, in your startup, and you're saying, I just have this feeling like it's not going too well. Ask yourself, is communicate, communicate, communicate happening with all the right people? If it's not, maybe you can send an email out before the weekend, do something about it. Is it in your family? It's a good question too. In many spheres, this is something where if we just ask the question and follow it to its logical conclusion, sometimes we can find what we need to do next to move the ball down the road. So there's a little thought on communication coming out of our recent experiences in the hospital. I do hope that any of you who are dealing with challenges in your startup or in your family life, that you would give a little thought to this. We've been through a lot in the last month. We appreciate much patience on the part of so many. We're so excited about the future here on MedTech Crossroads. Our advisory committee is coming together. Our guests are lining up for the summer. It's going to be a great summer, but I just wanted to share this little reflection with you in hopes that it helps a little bit, either in your professional or your personal life. And with that, I'm going to do a quick check. We do have a slight issue here because our first pitch party contestant has failed to show. This is a first, kicking off our third pitch party, so I do apologize to everybody listening. I think what we're going to do is we are going to open it up for Q&A. If you've got a question or a comment about something that we've talked about today on the show or on any other show, or even more importantly, if you have an event that is happening that you'd like the community to know about, we'd love for you to tell everyone, right? Anyone involved in MedTech that needs to know about something, anybody involved, especially in the larger Michigan and Midwest community, let us know. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll give it just a couple more minutes in case we have something that happens here and our contestant shows up. We will try to get things rescheduled. I'm not quite sure what happened there, so my apologies to everybody involved. We had just had that conversation and thought we were on. I'm going to let our good friend Diane Bowie come on here and tell us what's on her mind. Diane, you're live.
Hello. I am just so glad to be here, and thank you for that reflection, Jean. It's very important. Showing the humanity of what we do matters, to all of us. When you said who's got events to talk about, you knew I was going to raise.
I love it.
Just because there's always fun stuff going on. And I am not personally the organizer of everything, but not everybody knows everything. And so for folks in the greater Ann Arbor area, for the first time in person again, the Biomixer is coming up on Tuesday, and that's going to be in a park in Ann Arbor. It's going to be in West Park. And so if you go to the Mish Bio website, and I'll put the chat, the information in the chat for the Mish Bio events. It's an event that's not organized by Mish Bio, but by folks who are interested in the bio industry. So folks who are biomedically interested and want to just grab drinks outdoors with some folks in a park, non-alcoholic drinks, and we ask people to self-identify as fully vaccinated. But that's happening on Tuesday. And then while you're on the Mish Bio website, check out some of their events coming up: the Michigan Forum for Digital Health and the Michigan Medical Device Summit. All of those happening in the coming 2 weeks. And then something completely different. Our friends up in Traverse City at 20 Fathoms have been working hard at the Health Spark Accelerator, and I have a small hand in that. And the Health Spark Accelerator has had a couple of fantastic keynotes. There's one coming up with the CEO of Munson this next Thursday that is open to the public. And last not least, they have their demo day coming up June 30th. And I'll go back on mute and put all of those good things in the chat.
Don't feel like you can go on mute yet, Diane. I love talking to you. And yeah, we actually mentioned the biosocial right at the outset. So thank you for reminding everyone of that as well. The other two events you just mentioned, Mish Bio's digital health and medical device forum coming up. Great reminders there. When you started talking about that, actually, you used the word biomixer. That's actually something that maybe you have some information, maybe you don't too, not to put you on the spot. We used to have an event around here run at Ann Arbor Spark that was the, did we call it the biomixer that was going on? Haven't heard much about that in recent months. Do you know what's going on with that as a community member, Diane?
So I will say there were a couple of things. One was I'm going to call it an event that was organized by Mish Bio, and so Steve Rapondolo would be the right person to ask on that one. And it was more around pitches, and so it would be more of a professional networking event. The Biomixer is something that Matthew Himes, a fellow community member, basically came up with and partnered with other members of the community to do. Pre-COVID, we would do that once a month in a bar. And thanks to sponsorship, among others, of Into Being and Ann Arbor Spark, and I'm going to forget some people because I'm not officially organizing it, we would get together in a bar, and the first round of drinks would be free. And so that always draws people out of the woodwork. It's a separate and different event. And so it's that event that was in a bar that had comparatively limited programming, right? Get together, talk to each other. Are you looking for a job? Do you have a job? How is your work going? Do you need help with something? Let's kind of just get together. This is the nature of the thing that's coming up. The other event, I remember it too. I haven't seen it in a while. And it could just be that with COVID, a lot of us have kind of just gone back to the drawing boards and thought, do I really want to do this thing remotely, or do I focus on other events? And what I'm seeing with the programming of Mish Bio right now is it's other events, and that's great too.
Yeah, well, it's been a reshuffling. People have had to sort of think, okay, how am I gonna do this? And we all like to prognosticate on what's gonna happen in the future, but I think the honest truth is we don't know, and we're just gonna have to find out. One of the things that came home to me was this idea that actually getting people in the room to talk about things, it's truly valuable, and many times it's been patchwork to keep that from happening. So I think we're seeing that trend back. Diane, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything else we should know from your end of the world? Diane Bowie, great person though. If you don't know Diane, you got to reach out and make contact with her if you're in the community, because she puts people together. It's amazing.
I very much appreciate that shout out. I wasn't even planning on saying anything just because I'm in and out and I have internet issues. And so I'm sorry that I reiterated something you said earlier.
No, it's perfectly good. It's perfectly good. We appreciate it. We appreciate your being here. We'll leave the line open for any other comments or announcements, just like Diane did. See, that was the demonstration right there of what we're looking for. Just be like Diane, and if there's something happening, anyone from the west side of the state who has events coming up, we'd love to hear from you, especially as well. If you have upcoming events, we're just trying to give a little bit of time here in case for some reason our pitch party contestant does show back up, as we haven't reached the end of our hour yet. So in this case, we're just giving a little bit of space in case that does happen. But we'll leave it open here for a second to see if we have any others. Let's see if I can. Again, we're not usually ones to fill time, but as we're waiting for our pitch party contestant to see if they do show up. Oh, I did just get an email here. We had a communications breakdown. We are going to leave this line open, and we're going to try to bring our pitch party contestant. It looks like this may have been, well, a communications failure after our little discussion earlier. So this applies to all of us, not just. You can never point the finger because sometimes it could be on yourself, or in this case, on myself. Let me, as we're talking here, I'm just going to make sure that we have this all sent. And hopefully we'll be able to get our guest on here for just a minute. While I'm waiting for him to make it on here, I want to see if there's any other events that we can talk about that are happening locally. We do have, I got a note the other day from our friend Sandra Cochran over at WMU, WMed. They continue to have, just so you're aware of it, they continue to have venture activities. There's one coming up in July. So don't forget about WMed Innovation Center and the inimitable Sandra Cochran over there. I don't know exactly what their current needs are, how to get in touch for that, but I am aware that things are happening. If you're looking for venture events in the middle of the summer, that would be worth a reach out. And Diane did stick the information there, the MishBio link that we had earlier you can go to, as well as the HealthSpark keynote with Munson CEO Ed Ness. That is in the chat there that you can get to. Again, just if you just joined us, we are just killing a tiny bit of time. We had a communications failure after a dialogue about communications, so it's very good and very representative and keeps us humble because we had a communications failure, and our guest for the pitch party is making his way towards our webinar, but wasn't able to join at the outset. So we're gonna bring him on here momentarily. I'm gonna let Ken Spencer on for a minute here. Tell us what's going on with Ken and MCirc and anything else on Ken's mind.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. And geez, it's so good to hear that your son is doing better and well and stuff out there.
Thank you.
Thank God we have Mott close by, right?
Yes.
So we just completed today our sixth TBI Grand Challenge. There we had our Wolverine Den virtually here, so we'll award probably $600,000 into the 4 companies that we got through to the Wolverine Den today. So encourage people, if they're still looking at TBI stuff, to please stay tuned, because we do have, the Massies have supported us again. So we will continue our TBI work for several years to come, at least, on that. And also, Diane can probably fill in the dates, but Celebrate Invention from Tech Transfer is coming in the fall. Diane probably has a better update on that. And I know they're hopefully going to be able to do it in person this year. So if Diane's still on, maybe she has the proper dates for that.
That's a great point to bring up. Yeah, Diane, if you're still there, feel free to come back on, tell us about Celebrate Invention coming up this fall. She's just got a chat there. She'll come back on and do that. We are still waiting for our pitch party guest to come on here. Hopefully. I'd gotten an email, and I imagine he is frantically racing to track down the link here and to hop on. Well, if you're listening and just joined us, we are waiting for our pitch party contestant to come on. We had a communications failure after a little meditation on communications in different realms of product development and healthcare. Also from Diane, mark your calendars for A2 Tech 360. A2 Tech 360. That is great. During that week, we'll do Celebrate Invention as well. Diane says, Diane, what is the week for that? I guess I could go to the link here as well. October 1st through 8th, virtual and in-person events put on by Ann Arbor Spark, of course. Celebrate Invention, part of that. Entrepreneur Bootcamp celebration. Wow, all sorts of stuff happening as a part of the A2 Tech 360 event. And yeah, that would be cool if we can start to get people back together for that. We'll just see where we are for that. All right, I think we have contact. This is so exciting. And I'm going to ask our friend Parker Lynch with HedgeHog Health to join us here on the show.
Hi there, Gene.
Hi, Parker. I am so sorry. You and I talked, and I thought we had everything set up, and failure to communicate. The irony of this, Parker, is that I had just given a reflection today on the necessity of communications, and then part of this my ball drop apparently. So my apologies, but it's just a case in point. So you have now provided the best punchline to my entire presentation that anybody could have provided. So Parker is the first participant in this session of the pitch party. What we're going to do, Parker, it looks like your screen is up there really nicely. We're going to give you 10 minutes on the clock to present, and I'm going to turn my video and audio off. This is all going to be you. A little bit different from many pitch parties, we're not going to have Q&A afterwards because our judges review all the pitches at the end of the month, and we want them to each to stand on their own. So there's a million questions I'm sure they'd love to ask, and yet what we're really asking is, did we get the most common needed information in there for them to be able to review? So since we didn't get a chance to connect right before the show started, do you have any questions for me, Parker?
I don't think so. I'm allowed to just share my screen and kind of go through it, walk you through the pitch. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock. And when we get to about 8 minutes, I'll send you a chat that says, hey, you got 2 minutes left. And then one at 9 minutes. And then we'll end it at 10 minutes either way.
Okay, great. Sounds good.
Sound good? All right. Yep. Parker Lynch from HedgeHog Health, take it away.
Hi there, Gene, and everyone else. My name is Parker Lynch. I'm CEO of HedgeHog Health. So at HedgeHog Health, what we do is we want to fight for the families who have recently had a child who's been diagnosed with autism. This all started based on my previous history of being a special education teacher. I got my double master's in special ed. Ended up teaching it in various levels of education for the last 10 years. And the most common thing, I would talk to parents and of kids who are on the spectrum. The most common thing that came up again and again is the biggest pain point is this. Once a child is diagnosed with autism, by the way, 1 in 54 kids in the US have autism. It takes them 2 months to 2 years to actually, get ABA treatment. That's where we come in. We think that's, totally like an unbelievable stat right there. Imagine, having a child age 2, all the way to age 4, they're actually getting 0 treatment. Our solution is parent coaching. Right from the jump, HedgeHog Health wants to be the trusted provider where immediately the day after your child is diagnosed with autism, you can get a hold of one of our board certified behavioral analysts, which is also called the BCBA. And we can actually work with you and empower the parents. So we work with the parent, not with the child. That's what differs us from autism centers. And we can work with families right away. There's no 2-month wait. There's no 2-year wait or anything crazy like that. It's all covered by a new insurance mandate, a parent coaching mandate. That's really not utilized by autism centers because it doesn't fit within their economic model. This is kind of where we sit amongst the competition here. We're kind of alone at the moment, as you can see in the upper right sector. The bottom left is all, those are like kind of the brick and mortar, the old school centers, like Autism Speaks is one that's probably very commonly known. Century is another one. Those are, the big traditional brick and mortars that really they have the child come in, then the child goes back, and that's how they make their money. The bottom right is all the incumbents, along with Sprout is our closest competitor, I would say. We differ from them in the fact that they actually send someone into the house, right? So they send in a behavioral therapist into a house. We have BCBAs and we're 100% virtual. We don't have a brick and mortar. We don't have boundaries. So, we believe that in effect gives us an advantage over the competition here. And this is where we get pretty much the flow of our referral partners. A lot of word of mouth. We're developing a community right now that really trusts us. We've been doing this for we're fairly new at this for the last 2 months, and we're learning every day best ways to get clients. Really, the best way to get clients for us is going directly to the pediatricians, because at the moment, all they do is pediatricians provide parents with a list of autism centers of the traditional brick and mortars. And again, they're gonna have to wait 2 months to 2 years. In Michigan, it's closer to 2 years for most of these autism centers. So that's really where we're getting the most for our referrals. We also have some partnerships with some smaller autism centers. We don't consider ourselves a competitor to an autism center. We consider ourselves, to be working with autism centers, prepping families to prep the child to enter an autism center for the best overall outcome here. Here's our revenue model really quick. So basically give or take two days, 1 hour a day, 2 hours a week at $125 per hour. This is all covered by insurance, as I mentioned before. So it's all billable, which makes each client very valuable, around $36K per lifetime value. The market's huge. In 2018, 7 billion, estimated to be over 10 billion by 2030. So there's plenty of room in the market for us. This is our team. I kind of spoke about myself really quickly. My COO has worked with over 20 startups. Dr. Jordan Boudreau, he started the Autism Centers of Michigan, and he has worked with hundreds of families over the years. They ended up selling to Acorn Health, health insurance company. Mohammed Hamid is our VP strategy of business development. So he's getting us in front of potential strategic partners and family offices. And Dan Mastromonaco is our CTO. Here's our financial roadmap. So far, we've raised $1.2 million out of a $1.8 million friends and family round here. It's on a convertible note, 6% interest, 20% discount. all of the money raised is really just going into working capital. We're at the point now where we need to basically we really need to hire more BCBAs. They don't come cheap, but we found that with our model, we're paying them better than they get paid at a brick and mortar. We're also taking all the admin work off their plate. So we do that all in-house, which, BCBAs don't become BCBAs to do the paperwork. They want to work with families. Just as as a teacher, I didn't want to, I taught to work with kids, not to really, make my schedule or anything like that. This is my personal information here. If you'd like to contact me, that's my cell phone number, my email address to speak further. I think I may have a few more minutes or a couple of minutes. I'm going to continue here. This is one of the questions that we get most often, so I kind of wanted to address this quickly. Basically, I'm not going to read this all to you, but again, it's really to the interest of the brick and mortar autism centers to have the child come in. So basically, parents, they meet with parents essentially once a month. So it's like the equivalent of going to a parent teacher conference. You're going to hear okay, here's what happened. Here are the skills acquired. And that's it. Whereas we're working with the parent every week and helping the parent be able to do, to help the child acquire skills in the comfort of his or her home. A lot of the big complaint that we would hear from parents is that hey, my kid goes off to the autism center. I'm told they're acquiring skills. They come home and then, they're in their safe space. And then that kind of all goes out the window and the results are not really able to be seen. These are some of our financial projections. Again, I can send this deck to anyone who's interested to break that down a little bit more. Here's kind of this is the market overall, where we've actually had a buyout offer from someone who's not listed here, which is Lyra Health has offered an early buyout for us. We declined, but that's in the mental health space too, which we hadn't even considered when we put this slide together as an exit, because there are a few facts that are pretty startling, but not surprising, I guess. Parents of kids with autism are more likely to have a divorce, more likely for depression. There's a potential exit in the mental health space as well. This is actually what really started everything for us. People ask, how did you start the company? We did a Kickstarter. This is a fidget mouse that I developed and I invented. Usually I start the pitch talking about that. Since I'm kind of rushing through this pitch, I omitted that part, but this is how we started. This is how I met my co-founder through this Kickstarter campaign that we ended up doing. And that is pretty much it for me. I would take questions if there were questions, but thanks so much, Gene. I appreciate it. And sorry again for the last minute drop in.
No, that's great, Parker. I really appreciate it. Thank you for presenting this. And like I said, you created an absolutely perfect counterpoint to my presentation there. I'm going to stop the sharing there. We can chat for just a minute more here as well. And we did get some good talking here amongst our audience while we were waiting. We appreciate you being here. Let me ask you this question. There's only one question that we asked each one of our pitch party participants, and that is, tell us just a little bit more about your passion, about why you're doing this. It's very hard to think about starting a company. It's very hard to do all the legwork. It's hard to deal with the rejection. It's hard to deal with all the craziness. You just demonstrated that you can pitch on the drop of a hat when it looked like something wasn't happening correctly. So kudos to you there. But tell us about your passion. Why are you doing this?
It's really for the kids and for the families. I've just, being a teacher, you see so many of these individualized cases, and I've taught at schools that don't specialize in special education as well, where I've taught in some private schools where it's probably not the best fit for the child, and then you just see some of these schools are not equipped either, like in terms of the teachers that are there. Maybe they don't have the background, or like they don't have the essential, I guess, like the tech that can be helpful, and other things like that. And that's kind of like why I created the Hoglet in the first place. And then after talking and hearing the pain points about the wait list, that's the thing that really broke my heart, is like these families are just, they get the diagnosis and they're like, what the heck do I do? So that's where we want to help as HedgeHog. We want to be like basically that the hand holder, and be able to guide you to, hey, what's the nearest best ABA center for you? You know, we don't intend on just like keeping them only doing the parent coaching the whole time. We are looking for best overall outcomes for the family. So that's really like what stuck with me, is like talking to these parents, hearing what all the fight that they've had to go through, and just trying to be there for them and make a product and services for them.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Parker, for being here. I hope you'll tune in on the 25th when our judges will have reviewed all the pitches and will comment on each one of them. The whole point is critique and what we like, what we don't like, and then they will tip their hat towards one of the pitches. So hope you join us on the 25th. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
So with that, I just want to mention that Diane plugged into the chat. We were chatting earlier about local events. Diane plugged into the chat. U of M Tech Transfers Celebrate Invention is still last year's info on the website, but this year is Celebrate Invention. Sorry, I mangled that. This year's Celebrate Invention will feature the Distinguished University Innovator Award on October 6th at 3 to 4:30 p.m. So hope everyone can be there coming in the fall as well. That's it for MedTech Crossroads today. Look forward to the second week of the pitch party next week, along with our special guest. And we will see you then. Have a great week until then. Bye-bye.